Everybody, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Commissions and Cashflow Show. Today, I am with my good friend, Omar Lopez. Omar, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thank you, Drew. I appreciate you having me here, brother.
Omar, you have an incredible story. I don't want to, give your story away here, but you had almost a life-threatening injury that completely changed your whole projection on life and the industry that you're in now. Can you share with the audience, a little bit about your story?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me here, brother. I met Drew at a real estate conference, boardroom in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee.
2 years ago.
Yeah, a few years ago. And after that, we just hit it off. We went out and had some dinner, and he's from Miami. I had recently moved to Miami as well. And we had a lot of fun that one night. So we've been able to connect back and forth. So appreciate you having me here, brother. But let's get some value to your listeners. Going back to my story, I never thought that I was going to be here in sales. So, for anybody out there listening, like, your life can change like that. I never thought I was going to be in real estate. I actually grew up in a Mexican household. My dad immigrated from Mexico. Mom immigrated from Mexico. Was raised to go to school, get good grades, all that stuff. And one thing about me was that my dad always took me to work ever since I was 6 years old. On Saturdays, instead of going out with my friends on Saturdays and all that, or playing video games at home, my dad used to take me to work ever since I was 6. I used to push a lawnmower since I was like 6 years old. I've heard stories from people that I couldn't even reach the lawnmower, but there I was with my dad. And I did that for many years growing up. And in the summers, I used to go work at my uncle's tree trimming company, and they used to pay me cash. I used to be raking and all that stuff. So I knew how to work hard ever since I was a kid. And then boom, I went to college for horticulture, turf grass management. That was kind of the thing in my area. I thought that I wanted to have my own landscaping company. And then there was a period where I had about 4 years where I wasn't doing so good, hanging around with the wrong crowd and everything. And then that's during the time when I wanted to basically clean up my act. And I was a tree trimmer at the time. And I had this tree that broke on me. I came crashing down and I fractured my vertebrae. I came down on a brick wall on my butt, and my life changed after that. After that, I had this fire in me because I was at a period where I wanted to change who I was from hanging around with the wrong crowd. And then boom, I fell down. I think it was like God just saying, boom, there you go, let's go. That's for all those years that you've been out of alignment, if you will. And from there, I started reading some books and all that. And then there was a period where I kind of started hanging around with those old buddies again for a little bit after I had my back surgery and everything. And then one time I remember staying up all night and, the next couple of days just being very disappointed with myself and just being unhappy with myself. And that was like my rock bottom. It wasn't rock bottom, but maybe compared to other people, but it was my rock bottom. And I said, you know what? I'm just tired of being the old person that I was. I'm tired of these old relationships. And I said, you know what? I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to make a lot of money. I remember at the time I was watching YouTube videos and I used to see Ty Lopez or other people that said, the more you learn, the more you earn. So I remember going to my public library. I was like, I'm going to walk out of that library with some books to read. And I go over there and I'm just, my mind is just hungry for knowledge, hungry for change. And I got these books and I'm reading them. And then I stumbled upon one with Robert Kiyosaki. I had already read a little bit of Cashflow Quadrant, and so I knew who Robert Kiyosaki was, but then I read this one called Why the Rich Are Getting Richer with his accountant, Tom Wheelwright, and they kept talking about real estate. And I was like, this is interesting. Let me see this. And I remember I was like, all right, let me pull the trigger on the first 3 books of Robert Kiyosaki. I literally remember that time when I bought the package of 3, it was like $38. And I remember at the time, being a little nervous, oh, damn, that's $38 right there. Maybe I should just get one. All right, I'm just going to get 3 for $38. And I got them, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and Rich Dad Poor Dad was talking about designing your own life. That one section, I can't remember it. He said, yeah, it was towards the end. A real estate, passive income, live a life that you want to design, live a life by design. And I said, you know what? I'm going to live a life by design. I'm going to design my life. And so that was it. I said, I'm going to pick real estate because at the time I knew that I had to pick one thing. I was like, you know what? I don't want to invent a new gadget. I want to make a lot of money. Real estate, tried and tested, has been here for thousands of years. Land, they're not making any more of it. Houses, I could do this. I could do this. This shouldn't be that hard. So after that, I just got into real estate, started going to real estate meetings, hanging around real estate crowds, and then here we are today.
Awesome. And so I know you run a very big wholesale operation, but was wholesaling the first thing that you did, or did you get into a different side of real estate first?
So in the beginning, I did try wholesaling for a little bit, and I was driving for dollars, cold calling. I was cold calling people that uh, didn't even want to sell their house. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just taking action. I was like, all right, I'm just going to get into real estate. I'm just going to go to these real estate meetings. I told my mom, I'm going to call these people, ask them if they want to sell their house. She said, you're just going to call these people, ask them if they want to sell their house? I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to call them. And I remember calling $1 million houses. I didn't know that you had to narrow down lists and get people that were in foreclosure. I couldn't really connect the pieces of the puzzle together. And then finally, after going to these real estate meetings, I said, oh, you got to buy these houses at a discount. And I remember thinking to myself, who the hell would sell their house for less than what it's worth? But it just all started clicking. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is sales. I got to be able to negotiate a deal. So I drove for dollars a little bit. I got kind of close. I messed up my first couple contracts. I became close to getting a couple, but I didn't. And then I had a mentor that was flipping mobile homes. So at the time I said, okay, you know what? I think I could do this. There was another guy local that was successful in flipping mobile homes. And so I kind of went down that route for a little bit. I said, you know what? Let me pick this. I'm going to flip mobile homes and then kind of graduate to something else. And I actually bought and sold many mobile homes. I was like the mobile home investor in my town in Palm Springs, California for a while.
Was it the mobile homes itself, or was it the mobile home park? Like, were you buying these big parks and then increasing the net operating income, or were you actually buying the mobile home itself, doing some renovations, and then selling it to one person? Like, tell us,
Yeah,
what
of course,
exactly
of
were you
course.
doing?
So it wasn't the mobile home parks. I wish. It was actually just the mobile homes. Like I would buy these mobile homes and I started buying and selling a lot of them on paper. So creating notes. So I would buy one for like 10K, put like 5K into it, sell it for k. So and with like a 5K down payment, so I'd have like 10K in it. And then the rest in monthly payments at 9% interest, payments of like $300-400 a month. So I did a bunch of those. Next thing you know, because I had the passive income mentality for a while, because I was hanging around a crowd in the real estate meetings where it was a lot of old school investors. Oh, passive income, cash flow, and that's kind of what I had learned with Robert Kiyosaki, right? Like cash flow, right? Get out of the rat race. So that was my mentality at the time. So I don't know. I bought and sold several dozen mobile homes in the area. After a while, I didn't sell all of them on payments. Some of them I just bought and sold for cash, or I even wholesaled, just make a quick 20-25K spread just by wholesaling it. So I did that for a while, but then after a while, I started running out of money too. So then what I would do as well is I would go to all these real estate meetings and I started branding myself. I used to go on stage and I used to tell these investors like, hey, you know what? My name is Omar Lopez, or not just the investors, but I was targeting investors. It was just a real estate meeting, right? Like the ones that they have locally.
Mm-hmm.
So I would tell the crowd, hey, my name is Omar. I buy and sell mobile homes. I have a couple of notes, because you could sell the notes as well. I said, I don't need money yet, but eventually I will need money. So if any one of you guys have money, let me know and I can put it to work. So I just kind of started building up my brand, started getting people's phone numbers and everything. And next thing you know, after selling several of them on notes, if you tie up the cash, if you don't recoup your cash, you're going to run out of money. So then I started learning how to raise money, and I
Which is
started.
a very valuable skill, by the way.
Exactly. Exactly. From there, for me, raising money is not that difficult, because I started doing that like a long time ago. So I started building up that skill. And then after a while, I started realizing, I said, I'm actually not in real estate. I'm not really a real estate investor, because I'm just flipping mobile homes. I'm just flipping private property. But at the time, I did buy two rental properties that we did with the cash out refi on my dad's personal residence. So I was able to convince my dad to do that. I remember he first started seeing me do that, and he was apprehensive to it. Like, he's like, what? How are we going to get another 30-year loan? As a Mexican family, all your parents want to do is just pay off the properties.
Yeah.
They don't want no debt. They don't really understand there's good debt and bad debt. That was back in 2019. We did a cash out refi, bought two properties out of state. And it was during that time when I was still mobile home investing. In a way, I was investing in real estate, but with mobile homes, I wasn't. So then I said, you know what? I want to be a real estate investor. I don't want to be a mobile home investor. So, at the beginning of the year, and even more now, I'm pretty big on goal setting. I get intentional with, setting my goals, setting plans and everything. I remember sitting down this one time and I said, all right, I'm going to start buying rental properties. So that's what I started doing. I started driving for dollars again, and I started targeting homeowners, doing a little bit of wholesaling, but primarily holding on to rental properties.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I had a portfolio of about 12 properties. When I least expected it, I had over $1 million net worth. I didn't even realize it. I was like, oh shit, I just, got my assets and my liabilities. And I said, okay, so this is what it feels like to be a millionaire.
And so
Wasn't
how were you acquiring those properties? Was that from raising capital, or was that from buying the property, raising the value by doing renovations and then refining, or how exactly, were you able to, at a young age, purchase these 12 properties and then build up that equity so that it was worth over $1 million?
Yeah, a lot of it was seller finance. I got pretty good at seller finance.
Okay.
Yeah, I got very good at using my financial calculator, and because I would use my financial calculator to buy and sell these mobile homes when I sold them on payments as well. So then what I would do is I started selling some of my notes from my mobile homes, raising some capital, and then I would buy some of these mobile homes, or no, these other rental properties. Oddly enough, I was able to buy a lot of properties in a mobile home community where you own the land. So
Okay.
now I started owning real estate, not just the mobile homes. And I would buy some of these on seller finance, and I would grab the cash from the notes that I would sell on these regular mobile homes, and I would put them as down payments on the other mobile homes that had the real estate. So little by little, I kind of started doing that, and then we also tapped into my dad's 401k. And then little by little, I started doing a couple of flips, a couple of wholesales. So then from there, like I was able to buy more properties, and the portfolio just kind of grew with time. It also went up in value because I started buying some of these like around 20. And then COVID came, and then interest rates went low. So they kind of just increased in value with time.
So now that you built up that portfolio of 12 houses, had the equity in it, then today you run a very big wholesale operation, which is predominantly sales, flipping paper, taking a nice fee, and just keep going. Sales marketing, sales marketing. So tell us about the operation that you have today in South Florida. What markets are you in? How big is your team?
With time, I went to this one mastermind with a bunch of high level players that were doing wholesaling and a bunch of other stuff. And I noticed how they would do 3-4 million a year, take home 25-30%. So I said, man, you know what? That's some different type of money. I want to do that. So, because the same thing with mobile homes, after buying so many, you also start getting cash poor again. You're equity rich, but you're cash poor. So then, what was it? Maybe 3 years ago, at the beginning of 2022. Yeah, 3 years ago, I went to that mastermind with Chris Rude, and I met all those guys, and I said, you know what? I'm going to do my wholesale operation. And fast forward now, our team is not that big. It was a little bit bigger. Right now, we're starting to hire again.
Okay.
Last year we did 1.1 million. We do like an average of around like 100,000 a month. Right now it's 10 of us. We got some virtual team members and some in-house team members. So that's pretty much how it is. We run PPC. We started implementing direct mail in South Florida. Primarily, it's always been PPC for like the last 2 years. So we just run ads on Google. We manage our own accounts. We just run ads.
For those that are looking to get into wholesaling, marketing is a very, very big part of it. What made you want to do PPC? Because typically Google's expensive.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So 2 years ago, when the market started correcting, when it started correcting in June or July of 2022, during that time, it took about 6, 7, 8 months for it to really correct and to start seeing what was going on. We were always doing cold calling at that time, and it was always working. During that time, the market was pretty hot, so we were able to put a lot of properties under contract and sell them pretty quick because there was a lot of speculation from investors. And once the market started correcting, we were having a hard time putting properties under contract. So, the buyers were backing out, and the sellers were still stuck on like the high prices that everybody was giving. The investors were focused on the future. They're like, no, you know what? We're going to tank. So at that time, we had to pivot into novations. So we started pivoting into novations, and I just want to pivot it into PPC because I was getting tired of cold calling. cold calling wasn't hitting the same way that it was. And I remember my buddy Nick Perry, he had like a long time that he had been on PPC. So what we started doing is we started casting a wider net with PPC in different states, because
Mhm.
PPC, when you cast a wider net, when you're not local, it's actually cheaper. So when you're local, just in South Florida or just in your major metro, your leads are going to be
More
three,
expensive.
four,
Wow,
eight.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So Google penalizes you for working in your home turf, essentially?
Well, it's you have more competition, right? So you have more competition and you're making it work more to be able to have your ad pop up above the rest. Like in South Florida, there's just like way more competition.
Way
People are
more.
saturated, and yeah, you're staying focused more local. But when you cast a wider net, you just kind of cast it, and it's like, hey, just give me. You are able to compete against multiple markets, right? So you're
Mhm.
not very saturated. If you're casting a wide net in the whole state of Florida, somebody in Jacksonville, their budget might run out. So then, boom, yours pops up, right?
Yep.
But then, yeah,
And are you guys focused all of Florida? Are you in multiple states? How big is your reach?
yeah. We're in 6 states, primarily 6 states. Sometimes we get some leads. Like we started off with 25 states, and then we narrowed it down to like 12 states. Then narrowed it down to like the 6 states in the South. So we're in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Indiana, Texas, and North Carolina. Those are our bread and butter. We just started doing some direct mail that have been giving us some pretty big spreads down here in South Florida. It's way more expensive than our PPC, but I do want to tap into this local market, and I'm kind of split testing it to see how it's going to perform, because I'm kind of on the fence whether I should go more local, get more cash buyers lists and all that stuff, or still stay more spread out across multiple states and going down that route. So I feel like I was going to mention something right there. Yeah, 6 states primarily. Like
Okay.
recently we actually got a deal in New York. We're not even running deals in New York, but somehow your Google ads, they'll spread to different states, and we actually made 40K on that deal.
That's awesome. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk about that now. So for somebody that is considering getting into wholesaling, you mentioned 40,000. Is that like a typical wholesale fee?
So our average deal size is about $18,000. So it's not very typical for us. Kind of averages out. Industry average for wholesaling is like 15 to 20K. If you're doing 25K, you're doing pretty well. There's a couple other people that I've noticed out that'll have rips of like 30K, and of course that's way better. But I would say that on average, at around 15 to 25K is pretty normal in the industry.
Gotcha. Okay. And you mentioned before that you're pulling lists. So for the audience, what does that mean? Is that like specific, targets? Like you mentioned foreclosure. Is this like a low equity or high equity list, or what do you mean by lists?
Yeah, so with PPC Google Ads, you probably know this, but you don't pull this for PPC. You just run ads, and you're basically targeting whoever does like a key keyword search of like sell my house today, cash buyer today. So those aren't lists. But if you're going to be sending direct mail, or if you're going to be cold calling or texting, then yes, that's where you pull lists on websites like PropStream, Property Radar, a couple other ones, Batch, I think. And those are lists that you ideally do want to target of people in certain areas that have higher equity, are older than 55, maybe tired landlords. Those are people that probably own a rental property and like live like in a different state or something. They've been
Mhm.
owning it for a long time, and foreclosures, tax delinquents, and stuff like that. So we use a mail house right now called REI Print, and right now we're mailing an invisible list and a shipwreck list. The invisible list, it's like in their company, it's a list of the ones that I just mentioned right now. It's all combined: the high
Mhm.
equity, the senior citizens, the tire landlords, and all that stuff. And that's the one that's actually been working out pretty well for us. And then we mailed to a different one that they call the shipwreck, which is basically a collection of foreclosures, tax delinquents, intra-family, like probate type of situations, stuff like that. So those are the lists that I'm referring to.
Okay, awesome. And so then once they reach out to you and they say, "Hey, I'm raising my hand. I'm interested in selling my house." What does the sales process look like when they contact you?
Yeah. So we have what we call a 6 step sales process. So for direct mail or PPC, it's pretty much the same. They reach out to us, we call them and say, "Hey, Drew, how's it going? this is Omar with Fast Home Cash Offers. I noticed you submitted a form. Yeah, it's me. Okay, great. Well, listen, right off the beginning, you want to set the expectation. Hey, so this call right here is just so that we can learn about each other and first determine if we might even be the right fit for each other. Now, you might find that we're not a fit for you, or we might find that you're not a fit for us, right? So if we think that we are a good fit, then we'll submit it to our underwriters for an offer. But if we're not a fit, then we're not going to submit an offer and we'll just point you in a different direction. Will that work? Yes. Okay, great. Boom, right there. We take them through like a pain funnel. We use like the spin selling model.
Okay.
Uncover the situation. Hey, tell me about the situation. Get into the problem, the why, the motivation, the impact questions. How is this pain impacting you, or the implication? What happens if you don't do anything? And then the end is the need payoff. The spin selling, I got it from a book called Spin Selling. And the end is like a solution. Like they call it need payoff, but it's more like a solution. All right, well, what's the best solution? So from there, it's a funnel, right? We're kind of qualifying them. And then we get into the roadblocks. All right, why a cash offer? What made you reach out to a cash offer? What is it about a cash offer that caught your interest? Have you thought about listing on the market with a realtor? How are the conversations going with other investors? Why not just keep it as a rental? Give it to your family member, whatever the situation is. From there, what kind of questions do you have for us? Anything that's important? At this point, if they're serious, they're slowly going to go down the funnel. Right.
So you mentioned something that I want to make sure that we don't skip over. So you mentioned how you asked them about, hey, why don't you just give it to a family member? Why don't you just list it with a realtor? A lot of salespeople will be very, very afraid to ask questions where you're giving them another option. But this is a part of your sales process where you are giving them those options. And clearly it's working for you because I know the type of revenue that you do. But why do you include that in the sales process? Why do you ask those questions?
Absolutely. So I actually didn't believe in asking those types of questions up until maybe like a year and a half ago, when I started learning more sales from like other team members. I actually had this one old team member that he was our top closer, and he actually taught me a lot about sales. He knew a lot. And when we hired him, he put me up on game as well. So the reason that we asked that is because for two reasons. The first one is you want to let them know that you're not really thirsty for them. It's like, hey, have you thought about that? Like, that might be a good option. So at the same time, in their mind, they might be, you're right. The traditional salesperson might say, oh no, I don't want to ask them that because, if I say that, they might think, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, thank you. I don't want to work with you. Right. But in a way, it's like, hey, I really don't care if you go down that route or not, because, we have a ton of people that reach out to us. We run PPC, we get cheap leads. So it's like, if we don't work anything out with you, I'm going to work it out with somebody else. And at the same time, so it develops some trust. And then at the same time, if they are thinking about somebody else, you want to identify that and get through that, because you don't want to deliver the offer or get through the sales process and come to find out and they say, oh, listen, I'm actually just going to list it on the market with a realtor. Thank you. You want to be able to identify that, get to that roadblock, because if it's a roadblock, see the things that we're scared of asking in the sales process, in my experience, really come back and bite you in the ass later.
Yep.
So by uncovering it, bringing it up to the table, ultimately, what I've also learned is that sales is not just about qualifying the lead. It's also about disqualifying the lead. So if they have these other options, these other roadblocks, bring them to the surface right now. Let's get through them. I always use the analogy of like having like an object right here. If it's a roadblock, all right, like it's gonna hit you. If it doesn't hit you right now, it might hit you later. Let's get through it. Okay, what is it about that? And so you ultimately want to be able to influence them. And if they have that option, and if that's really a better option, and if they're gonna go for that option, then that person's probably not going to be a fit for you. But if you're good at selling, if you're good at influencing them, you might be able to scorch the earth and say, hey, listen, do you really want to do that? Like, we might be the better option. So that's why we ask it.
Yeah. Now, look, wholesaling is now a very, very popular type of investing in real estate. I don't know if it's because of social media with TikTok and Instagram. I feel like you go on to one of those platforms and you have like 18-year-olds that are now very successful in wholesaling real estate. So there's a lot of people that are out there doing it. How are you differentiating yourself against all the other wholesalers out there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And the way that we do it here is we provide the utmost professional experience. So we take them through the sales process. We treat everybody with courtesy. Our mission, which is written on our wall, is to provide the best streamlined experience when selling and buying a home. That's our mission. Every team member that gets hired, everybody in here knows that our mission is to provide the best streamlined experience when selling and buying a home. And so with us, we're just professional. We listen to them. We don't go straight to the offer. We listen to their pain, their needs. We figure out if we're a good solution for them. Then we go through the conditions. We come back. We give them the offer. See, the sales philosophy that we have as well with us is we like to stay calm and detached. You know, so our competition, they don't really have a sales process. If they jumped on a course that they recently learned, maybe the course just gave them like a 1 or 2 page script, and they might be winging it. They might get straight to the point. They might disrespect the lead. They might want to get straight into the price. They want to deliver an offer. With us, we actually hold out on our offers. We don't deliver offers like unless the person deserves it, because we like to increase our status. We have a higher status when we talk to our homeowners. So we say, hey, listen, like, yeah, we might not be a good fit, and that's why we don't deliver offers on everybody. We only deliver offers because we have a specific budget that we're allowed to work with every single week. Our underwriters, so they only deliver offers to like people who are like ready. So if we feel that they're not going to qualify, then we try not to deliver that offer, because by us letting them know that we're going to deliver an offer or that we have an offer for them, it kind of makes us like thirsty, and it makes us seem like we lose leverage, because they're expecting that. So we hold our cards. So with us, it's a combination of everything, right? We like to maintain our status, stay calm and detached, but our competition, I mean, we've been told before, they're like, oh gosh, thank you guys. The last guys that I spoke with, man, they were just like used car salesmen, or worse than used car salesmen. They were scary. So our competition is unprofessional. They're below average. So that's how we stand out.
Yep. So your whole sales process is actually listening to what their problem is, diagnosing it, going through the options that they might have. They're telling you that those options don't work for them. You're there to then say, I'm ready to give you the offer if you are ready to move forward.
Yeah, pretty much. We also implement a commitment step where if we think that the person's going to be a good fit, we try to make sure that we apply some scarcity. That's where we use that one pitch right there. Like, hey, so we have a specific amount of funds. On the next call, when I deliver you the offer, can you tell us like just a simple no or a simple yes if it doesn't, or if it does work? What I mean by that is, because of our budget, if you say no, which is absolutely fine, feel free to tell us no, by the way. Other salespeople, they don't implement that, right? Other salespeople, they push for the yes. Like, oh no, you better tell me yes, right? And obviously we want a yes, but we just kind of tell them, hey, feel free to tell me no. Like, that's completely fine. So from there, we apply that scarcity so that we can avoid any think about it on the actual offer. So, we apply this scenario that we have a specific budget amount of funds that we can spend. So if you say yes, we're going to grab those funds and we're going to put them into a different holding account for your property. But if you say no, we know where we stand. We're going to grab those funds and use them for a different property. What we want to avoid is having people who sometimes say, hey, you know what? Let me think about it. Let me mull it over for a couple of days. Let me chew on it. In our experience, that's typically means no. And I think some homeowners are afraid to tell us no.
So those prospects that aren't yet ready to commit, but they're still your ideal clients that that you can make a lot of profit from, how are you either re-engaging them or how are you following up with them? Because I feel like a lot of salespeople, they have trouble following up. And that word follow up, or that phrase, it's like it's the word that you don't want to say when it comes to sales. So how are you staying like on top of mind so that when the sellers, when they're ready to actually sell their home, that you're at the top of their mind?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good question. I know this might sound a little contrarian, but sometimes like if the person is not actually ready to commit to an offer, then sometimes we won't even deliver an offer. Like, because it's like, well, at first what we try to do is we try to figure out and see what's the objection that they have where they're not ready to commit. So like if we can overcome that, then that's ideal. But if they're really calling to get like a free quote or like a free estimate, they're not very ready to commit, then sometimes we won't even deliver the offer, because like, we say, hey, listen, if we deliver the offer, like it doesn't really even make sense. Like they're not gonna commit to us, right? So in that case, we might give them like a very low range, like, oh yeah, I mean, this isn't a final offer by any means, but it might be like in the low 200s or something, so but at least we're not giving them the experience of like that final offer. But to answer your question, if for whatever reason we do need to follow up, they're just not quite ready. I mean, our CRM, really helps us out with that. We have a good CRM, set up a good follow-up day. We put them on a nurture sequence, follow up, whatever the timeline is, depending on the urgency of the lead, kind of call back, leave a text message or a voicemail. And some of those nurture sequences, they really help us do the work so that we don't have to think, who do I have to call today? So I think the CRM really helps us out for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Omar, thank you so much for the insights. We are going to get to the final part of our show, which is called the Final Four. These are the same 4 questions that we ask every single guest that comes on the show. So, question number 1. What is your favorite sales book or sales movie?
Yeah. So let's see. My favorite sales book for me has been You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bicycle at a Seminar by David Sandler. Yeah.
Okay. I have to read that one. I've never read that one before, but I have heard multiple people say that that's a good book.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Awesome. Question number 2. What's one sales strategy or tactic that you implemented that completely changed the game for you?
Yeah, I would say for us has been just being able to pull away and be afraid. Don't be afraid to tell the person to have them say like no to your offer, because a no is better than like, and I need to think about it. Because if it's an absolute no, then from there you could start uncovering the objections. I remember that one guy that was with me that taught me a lot about sales. I remember the first couple of days when he first came in, and I was doing a couple of sales calls, and then I had delivered the offer, and the guy's like, "No, you know what? It's all right. Like, I'll get back to you, or can I have a day to think about it?" I remember my buddy in the background. He was like, "Tell him like, hey, it just sounds like it's not going to work for you. That's okay. Feel free to tell me no, right?" And so I implemented that, and the guy's like, no. It's not that it's not going to work. It's just that X, Y, Z, whatever that objection is. So it's like, it's okay to like pull away. Like, hey, listen, it just sounds like it's not going to work. So if anybody's listening to this, and if they're negotiating, if you're in sales or something, and you deliver your pitch, and the person says no, or they want to think about it, just pull away and just say, hey, listen, I completely understand. That's not a problem. It just sounds like it's not going to work for you. And sometimes people are afraid to like, if it's a direct no, then they might tell you that it's like a direct no and it's just not going to work. But sometimes people, they might be afraid to just say the no, so they'll tell you what their true objection is. They'll be like, no. It's not that it's a no. Like, it's just X, Y, Z, whatever it is, right? Yep. So that was one of my biggest strategies, being able to pull away and welcoming the no, because that's where we kind of uncover the objection. Where before, you're trying to negotiate strictly on price. Oh, I mean, what is it? Or like, tell me more, So that's kind of been my strategy.
That's awesome. I love it. Question number 3. What is your most favorite purchase that you've ever made with a large commission check?
Gosh, I can't say that I've like specifically have splurged on a large commission check, but I mean, I remember when we were when we sold like one of our properties that we had in California. We made $160,000 on it, and from there, I would say that that's what kind of gave me the boost and that capital to really start and be where we're at today, like in Miami. It was at that time when we moved to Miami, came over here, set up shop and everything. So I wouldn't say it was a splurge, but I think it was just like a way for me to just kind of build the momentum to where we're at and being able to splurge on everything that we have today.
Awesome. I love it. And then question number 4, if you had to start all over again, knowing what you know now, what's the first thing that you would do to get it all back?
Knowing what I know now, I would have really started studying like a lot of sales books sooner, because there was a very long period where I thought I knew how to sell, but I didn't really know how to sell. I was more pushy than anything. See, sales is kind of like an art. You have to be like Picasso, like wielding the brush. Just it's not like one specific strategy. It's not one specific technique. And I really wish that I would have started learning more books like Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar, Start with No by Jim Camp, Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, and really stop to understand these books. Because I remember that I had listened to Never Split the Difference on audiobooks and stuff like that. But it wasn't until recently, a couple months ago, that I took my time, I highlighted it, I took notes and everything, that I really started understanding these strategies. And so after really taking sales serious and really being able to learn all this stuff, is when I kind of realized, man, I didn't really know how to sell. I thought I knew how to sell, but I didn't really know how to sell. Like, man, what a rookie before. So if anything, like I would encourage myself to really just go back and get very intentional with the education on all these sales books, for sure.
If people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's visible or not, but that's at the Omar Lopez right there. They can follow me on Instagram, and that's my main social media account right there.
Awesome. Omar, again, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you again soon, my friend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you.